that's going. Nothing seems like it's satisfying to anybody anymore. Have you noticed that, like, everything, it either ends and everyone hates the ending, or it doesn't end and everyone hates that it's still going, or, like, it ends conspicuously or suddenly and everyone's upset that it didn't get its, like, proper potential seen through. It's like no matter what happens, everyone just like hates endings. Everyone hates if something ends, and I think that's really interesting because it speaks to like how we as a culture have become so accustomed to taking in things and like consuming that we don't like ever want to see those things end. Several shows have ended recently. You look at like Stranger Things, The Boys, uh, reactions put here, and in this turnover of media, there's like a pattern of reactionary statements that are made throughout the show's final season. You get like generally the overly hopeful, optimistic ones where it's like, oh, well, the writers know what they're doing, and the writers are going somewhere with this, and we've stuck through the show for X amount of time, so let's see it through to the end, and yada, yada, yada. And then on the other end, these like insane conspiratorial, like people get kind of nuts about like, oh, there's going to be this big reveal, or there's no way that this is just going to end. It's they're gonna announce something later on. Obviously, I'm like kind of not so subtly referring to the reaction that Stranger Things had with its finale, but I think that you see this kind of more broadly with media, where people are just kind of infinitely reaching for things that are happening outside of the show to explain what's happening inside of the show, and like kind of to go a level deeper on that, explain their personal feelings for what is happening within the show, and how like there's these things lined up at one point, and and at some point there was a disconnect, and now you feel differently than how the show is making you feel, and you're no longer in lockstep together. And I think for a lot of people that's sort of like frightening or scary of an experience, like not dissimilar to having like a friend or a lover betray you in its felt emotional response. So you have that response that's made by the consumer, and then people who are like media critics, people who have seen the show who are apathetic to it but have seen the reaction online and want to comment based on the reaction online, or they've seen the show and they're part of this sort of reactionary base, and so you get these like, you know, the boys ruined my life because how bad the finale was, and I can't believe that I had to watch this. Oh my god, it's worse than Game of Thrones, you guys. And I think Game of Thrones is really like the pivotal moment because it was this show that people were very invested in, and it had this disappointing conclusion, and that sort of was like a monocultural experience of like people being disappointed by the show. But you know, another show that the culture was massively disappointed by its ending was Lost, and you know, people don't even talk about that. People don't, you know, watch the end of something now and say like, oh, it's as bad as the ending of Lost, and you could say that that's like a millennial coded, and that like it's because the people who watched Lost like don't even remember Lost really, but real Lost heads know. Um, and I just feel like there was a point in time where your show having a bad ending was just how a show ended. It's just how TV went. Because I don't know if you guys know this, TV shows are bad. It's never good media. You have this like kind of people have convinced themselves that psychotically that everything that they're consuming is like good and high production because it looks nice and it like makes them feel good and it has like satisfying writing. Um, but like the Iliad has satisfying writing, kind of not maybe as powerful of a statement, since there is like a Iliad movie coming out. But let's not lose focus. So I've talked a little bit about shows that do end and how that's disappointing for people. But now I want to shift into shows that don't end. You get this a lot in adult cartoons. I mean, The Simpsons, Family Guy, Bob's Burgers. Um, all of these shows have been on the air for like over a decade, and I think all of these shows experience, both like within their fandom and within the larger cultural conversation, like a disappointment, at the core of its audience, where they're like, yeah, it's still going, yeah, I still watch it, so on and so forth. I'm like a diehard Simpsons fan. I do recognize that that comes from a place of like having watched it very, very early in my childhood, and that this is like a string of consistency that I can bring with me into my adult life. And I think ultimately that's what a lot of this is. But I'll get to that later. I don't want to lose focus. Adult animated cartoons have that tendency to stretch out longer, because like the way the production schedule for something like that works, it allows you to like have tighter narratives and to like sort of just slowly build out and kind of like engorge yourself on yourself, and you become fat with yourself, and then you're kind of just like picking pieces of yourself off and chewing on it like almost masturbator, yeah, okay. um and then you're consuming all these little bits of yourself and like almost like regurgitating it out. And the people are looking at this you vomit, and they're like, I don't know, that's like sort of reminds me of you, but it's like kind of grossly abstracted in like ways that are hard to describe. um, and then a show like Smiling Friends comes along, and it ends very abruptly and like kind of almost without, like, it sidelined people with how it ended, and its audience was all like super disappointed. And similarly, like, got into that conspiratorial mind frame again of like, no, Zach and Michael, they know what they're doing, they're like gonna announce a movie, and it's all, they're trolling you guys. And it's like, no, they just stopped making the show. I don't know, like, I don't think it's much deeper than that, personally. I think they wanted to stop doing it, so they stopped doing it. But it is relevant in that reaction that people have, this like, oh, this is so, I'm so sad that this show is ending now, because I 3 seasons wasn't enough, and I wanted to see it go on for more. Like, that feeling will never go away for a show you like. You'll always be like, yeah, I want to watch more of that. That's like what's happened with the Star Wars franchise. That's what's happened with a million other franchises, and that's how these things have a way of working their way into your skull. Because at the end of the day, we're all just like, have these like weird brains that don't really line up with the world we're living in have these weird little brains that don't line up with the world we're living in anymore. And I think that's really scary. I think that's really weird for a lot of people. I think a lot of people sort of like self-aggrandizing, or like, to talk about how they've struggled, will be like, oh, I didn't, I was raised by the TV. And it's like, brother, we were all raised by the TV. TV has been a consistent part of everyone's life who is alive now. Like, there's some variance to that. There's probably some like 150-year-old that's like never watched TV. Um, like, good on them. The 0.0000001% person who's the single case against this argument of people being, oh, but my grandpa never watched TV. So we've all been around TV for this long. Something like, what would the Fonz do is like genuinely as deep a spiritual and cultural expression as a what would Jesus do, to the right person, to the person who is deeply impacted by the Fonz and his legacy. And we carry on these like connections to media and to shows, and we let them kind of like work their way into our brains and become like little narrators where you go, go about doing your day-to-day life, and like the voice of some character is like kind of commenting on what you're doing because you've like binge watched and consumed so much of it that the show has like latched on to you in like a parasitic way. But you see it as like a good thing, so it's a symbiosis, but it's just like eating away at your brain, and like making you dumber and like making you less self-expressed, but you see it as self-expression because you relate to a character, and that's why you've allowed them to enter your mind sphere and narrate on your actions in your day-to-day life. Um, and then there's something ends, that show ends, and that transaction can no longer happen, and you as a person have to look at how you've changed, how in the how you maybe are a different person since 2011 and now. um, or you can just not do that and you can just keep going forever and never really address that. And shows, I think, disappoint people because of this, but you know what won't disappoint you by ending is YouTuber, is a TikToker, is Instagram account. Um, cut to different segment where now I'm talking about social media stuff. Oh, so this whole process that exists for TV consumption and like media consumption, that's like very toxic and like involves sort of like a rearranging of your psychic self and a projection of it. So then like the death of the show symbolizes a death of you, and you're like, but I don't want to die. And like more specifically, like the 16-year-old version of you is saying that because that's who started watching the show and has like become a, like, however old, insert age here, but like, again, like Bob's Burgers started in 2011, and if you're still watching that now, it's not like a dig on you, but like it's been literally 15 years. So like maybe worth reconsidering. Like people who started watching Bob's Burgers at 15 years old are 30 years old now. And that show hasn't ended, and so that if what do they have to signify that? Getting off track. But this is what I'm talking about. This like cyclical weirdness of like extended youth and how you can stay kind of like psychically naive and innocent for like more extended periods of time because there's never a cultural signifier that this thing has ended, um, is already bad with TV and has kind of like rotted TV out from the inside. But it's, I think, especially bad that we allow this to happen to people. There's anyone who earnestly pursues, uploading on YouTube is kind of like wishing to have this process done to them. They see the stage as so glittery and the attention as so worth. Oh, my camera is fucking going crazy. Okay, I don't hate that, but interesting. Um, they don't want you to hear about this. They don't want me to talk about this stuff because it's fucking too real. Um, yeah, so we allow ourselves to be like attached to these people and like to become attached to like a Rhett and Link mythical morning type. It's like literally just two guys that people have like also extricated, extruded into being like, ironic to say this, mythological figures, who I think, oh my god, it's like challenging though. It's like it really does like make me lose my entire train of thought. The toxic process of consumption that we find. Oh my god. Oh my god. It creepy pasted me. Oh, I should like. Okay, one second. That was so funny. Oh my, again, just like the worst in terms of not being Oh, and now I'm actually in focus. I think I was like half in focus for the entire thing, but this looks better now that I'm looking at it. And I've not been looking at the camera enough. I've just been looking down, but they're approximate. Literally, who cares? Um, you guys really, everyone who's watching this, I should be looking at you. I should be looking at you. I should be forming a human connection so that you want me to never stop uploading, and then you'll give me money to do it, and then I'll be trapped by you, and then you'll just influence me to keep doing stuff, and then I'll keep doing stuff, and that process will never end, and we'll just stay the same people forever, 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 forever. We'll never change, either of us, ever. Um, and it'll be perfect. It'll be, and then anytime I do anything wrong, you can correct me, and I'll fix it. Oh my god! I have to conclude this quickly because my camera keeps trying to fucking kill itself. Um, but so all of this to say that the process that we go through with disappointment and conclusion and television is like completely normal. Again, like I just don't think good TV has ever really existed, and I think that to kind of like assume it has, like, and to assume that like you are owed some kind of like perfect ending, like, is that not what like every book reading experience is about? Is that not like the core of like the idea of reading a book, is like the way you imagine it is better than any other way it could be shown to you, and like you're kind of writing the show along with the show writers. When you watch it, you're like, oh, what if this happened, and what if this happened? That's always going to be better than what the show writers do, because you're not them. There's disconnect. So just like be like, oh, I wish this happened. Like if it really, 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 really is in your brain, write a fucking fan fiction about it. Get those hands on the keys, baby. Um, but like, unless I don't know, Vince Gilligan is directing your show, the ending is gonna suck because no one has ever liked how their favorite TV show ended, and that's pretty much all I gotta say. So like, peace. Um, I do have a part of this in my dumb little script that I have like almost completely fallen off the framework of. But if you want to read the specific words that I thought of about this in some Substack, it's literally just two photos I took of this piece of paper because I didn't type it out in a digital document. Um, so it's hard to read, but this video is hard to understand. So maybe if you put them together, it's like a salient opinion, but probably not.